What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the LA Soccer Hub Show. My name is Gio Garcia. Man, what a weekend it was. We had Nation League final, semifinal. I was there. It was insane. We're gonna talk about that and just so much drama, so much different things that happened with Nations League. Some coaches got hired, some coaches got fired, or one coach got fired. But here to help me talk about all that, we got Justin Ruderman. Justin, how you doing?
Doing well, Gio. Wasn't able to go to the games like you were, but watching at home, enjoying it. I watched the Mexico game at a bar, actually. It was great atmosphere, actually, which was good to see in the United States because there were a couple bars that weren't even showing the game. And then one I found had a good atmosphere. But what was the atmosphere like there, Gio? Because it seemed very good, at least for the Mexico game, maybe not so full for the Canada game.
Okay, so I only went to the Mexico U.S. Mexico game. I didn't go
Okay.
to the final. But the U.S. Mexico game was insane. It was insane. Just like all the stuff. Like, look, any and these games are always hype. All the tailgating. Just even like on the strip, right in Vegas. Obviously, it was majority Mexico fans. Got to interview to the man on the street. Got to talk with them. It was like everything leading up to the game was exciting because it's like Mexico had this coach that not a lot of fans like, Diego Coca, whether it was his fault or not. Obviously, I think that just comes with being the Mexican national team head coach. And you obviously on the other side, you had BJ Callahan, who's their interim head coach for the U.S. national team. I think me, obviously, as a Mexico fan, I was very optimistic. I definitely knew there was a possibility, a high chance that they would not win. But I was surprised, to be honest, completely surprised by the performance and how they got smacked. But before I get into that, it was just it would to me it looked like a promising game for Mexico. Just from the fans, everybody got to talk to, right? But I think, like I said earlier, everybody thought there was a possibility of them losing. But man, it was just mad. It's in there as soon as it got it going. You had fights in the game, you had fights in the stands. It turned like low key. It turned into like a UFC fight. It was UFC fight night like match, just literally everywhere. It was just like chaos on the field, chaos in the stands, chaos over here, and like everything you saw, and it was just crazy. And we were gonna do. I was with the group of guys that went. We were gonna do like some man on the street after the game, but we like after we saw all that, we're like, nah, this is not worth it. We're not gonna get. We're not. There's no point in trying to get any of this content because it was just too chaotic, and yeah, it was surprising. It was chaotic. It was kind of like kind of disappointing in a way at how the Mexican national team kind of uh played and how dirty they were, and how they cried about everything and how they went about it. It was just a bad look overall, just as someone who supports the Mexican national team, as someone who's watched this team. And I know a lot of people are comparing this to the 7-0 loss to Chile, but I kind of that is terrible in its own self, right? But if anything could top that, I feel like this Mexico versus US game probably takes it because it's your biggest rival. Three, you got completely smacked around 3-0, and just how you carried yourself in there. And I think in a way this overtakes that game.
Wow. Yeah, that's a big statement. Obviously, yeah, you saw the frustration at the end of the game, I think. Obviously with the fighting on the field and all of that. But I mean, just started with Montez, right, kicking out at Balogun. That was just purely out of frustration, out of it's 2-0 right now. And we're getting beaten handily by our biggest rival. And that was the situation. And you hate to see that, but I like to see the passion, like the West thing when he kissing the badge, like that is iconic. And to me, while you don't want to see players getting into it on the field, those moments are almost worth it to me. They bring the passion. That's why we come and watch these games. Is because of what it means not only to the players but everybody in the stands. And there's no reward for fighting in the stands. There's no reason for that. So
Get kicked
that
out for
shouldn't be
sure.
happening. Yeah, it shouldn't be happening. No reason for that. But on the field, it shows the passion from the players. And Wes obviously apologized in the locker room after the game, and it was he seemed on the verge of tears. He was a little choked up, it seemed to me, and just saying, we're a team, we'll get this done. And he apologized, but to me, it's like you can't fault a player for that type of passion.
No, no, you can't. Look, anytime these two rivals, you always expect it to be chippy and all that. Obviously West Kenny, he's always in those little scuffles, I guess you call it, between the Mexican national team. He's definitely a favorite to get it. He's one of the guys. He's always in the mix, regardless of what happens. But yeah, this game, I expected it to be chippy. I expected it to be that way, but I just didn't expect them to be so nasty and those frustration fouls and everything. That to me kind of surprised me because yeah, obviously, look, it's a rival. There's going to be high emotions and all those different things. But I think there were, to me, on the Mexican side, there was no real leader, right? No real leader to
Mm,
step up and calm down the boys and be like, hey, we're losing, but we got to get our, we got to. Yeah, there's a way to lose respectfully, and there's a way to lose ugly, and just play ugly. And to me, this was just an ugly, ugly, ugly game just overall. And I don't think it needed to be. It didn't need to be that way. Even if they lost, like I kind of had the optimism, but when I saw after the second goal, I was like, okay, they're not coming. You know, I think there's me if they would have lost. I guess in a different way, but I guess I don't know. There's no good way to lose to an opponent. But I think some of the frustration from the fans and everything was because head coach Diego Coca was not starting players like Santi Jimenez or players that have played in Europe, right, and are killing it and starting. And there's other players that are coming like Liga MX and they're getting the start. And they haven't done a good job with the Mexican national team. And I think that to me, at least on the fan side, and maybe I don't know if this had to do with anything of the frustration with the players, but kind of to me, that's what I guess I could see on the fan side is for the frustration is like, hey, we have this guy that's killing it. We have other players that are playing in Europe but don't get the start, and they're not in the starting lineup, right? Like I think if they lost with all their quote unquote best players, yeah, there's injuries and stuff, but there were still enough players that play in Europe that could have started. And even if they went out and lost that way, I think it would have been an easier pill to swallow because you at least had everybody that was there. But the way they went out, man, it was just embarrassing.
yeah, I mean, I definitely agree. Santi should be starting for Mexico. He had a great season for Feyenoord, but the U.S. was missing, Tyler Adams, obviously a very key player, arguably the most important player for the United States in that midfield. And, and then in a final, of course, a couple more due to the red cards. But no, I think it was a pretty, I mean, both teams had basically their best teams and slightly off, you could say, for either side due to those minor changes. But yeah, it's just, I think you can see now after the US has for the first time won three CONCACAF titles back to back to back now with the Two Nations League and the Gold Cup and having a chance to go for four in about a month. The domination from the US over the rest of CONCACAF is starting to show itself. And I think, as we look forward to 2024, we can be appreciative that the Copa America is coming to the US because that is the next step, I think, in the progression
Mhm.
of the United States men's national team is competing on the scale of the Americas and, of course, the international scale after that, but the worldwide scale, excuse me. But to compete with the South American teams is obviously a massive step up from beating Mexico and Canada. And so once it feels like the US has conquered that step, it's time to almost level up,
Yeah, no, no. Look, you make a great point too on that, right? Like this is without a doubt, everybody knows this. This is U.S. men's national team's golden generation, right? The players, regardless if they didn't have a good seasons overall, I guess that's what you say. Individual players, they still showed up. Christian Pulisic always shows up against Mexico. I ended up sharing the tweet that they made Christian Pulisic into prime Ronaldo when he had the haircut just to the front. He shows up, man. Like and like whether you're a Mexican fan that doesn't like him or whatever, you gotta give him respect because there's a player that shows up in big games, and that to me is like okay, this guy, he shows up big games, and that to me is like in a way I'm like okay, the respect as a Mexican fan goes to another level because he's doing it. He's doing it. He did it last Nations League even with that PK. He got a brace in this game and just pretty much put it out there. And I think there was a clip that he said he's like, we're no longer the underdogs, and also understanding the moment of where the men's national team is at, and obviously them surpassing. To me, obviously, Mexico has been 6 games that they haven't been able to beat the U.S. men's national team. You mentioned three big trophies in a row, and yeah, and it's unfortunate because Mexico has always had the talent and all that, but you see countries like the U.S. men's national team and Canada who have progressed and been able to build up every single year, right? Maybe it's been a slow uh, build up to what they are now, but the thing it's also the progression with academies, players getting shipped out to Europe. And I think that's kind of like the big difference where I see the national team, right? You're getting players like McKinney, Pulisic, Tyler Adams, Aronson. They're right. You're able to send your American-born players, but you're also able to get players like Balogun, right? Who was going to play for who wasn't getting looked at by the English national team, and Serginho Dest, who also could have played for the Netherlands, right? You're also able to have at least influential players within the team that have that dual national citizenship, right? And I think for me, and biggest one of them all, Ricardo Pepi, right? And I think that's where I see the difference between the U.S. men's national team and Mexico is those not just the players that are within your country, but also the dual national citizenship players are Pepe is picking the U.S. men's national team. Sendeja has picked up the U.S. men's national team, but you're also able to recruit talented players like a Yunus Musa as well, and that to me has been the biggest difference. And I think there's this big conspiracy with with the Mexico national team that that right that like players like Henry Martin. This is a conspiracy. I have no truth or anything, but has been thrown out there that players like Henry Martin, who play for Club America, who started over Santi Jimenez, is there's supposed to be some type of influence that Liga MX players are starting over these European players because a lot of the influence from Liga MX clubs essentially run the Mexican national team. Look, that's a conspiracy. That's one of the ones you can kind of see because they're in nobody's right mind. Santi Jimenez should be coming off the bench. And I think some of I guess with the Mexican national team is like, we always kind of know, like, look, it's FIFA, it's football. There's some type of corruption, but when you kind of see it and kind of like the way what's kind of happening with the men's national team, you kind of almost be like, they can't almost kind of cover it up a little bit. I think that hits a lot different, and I think that's why you see the frustration with the fans, and also see no fans showing up for a third place game there. And look, I don't want to take anything away from U.S. men's national team, but they deserve all the credit. Look, you guys got your own issues, but you guys have been doing it in a much more effective way than Mexico has done it the last couple of years.
Yeah, well, I think when you're comparing the two, I think Zendejas is a great example to look at because he's one that could have absolutely gone either way, and the Mexico national team, well, not corruption, but they just handled it poorly. It was just they weren't aware of the situation, and they were told when Zendejas played for him that he needed to make a one-time switch in order to play that game for Mexico. They said, no, we don't care. He'll be fine, and let him play. Then they got punished. Zendaya said, I'm not dealing with a federation that doesn't even know the rules or care to follow them. I'm going to go to the United States, who are not only a federation that is looking to follow the rules, but is also one that's on the rise versus the decline in Mexico and obviously U.S. now above Mexico. So I think it's just that type of little things that come to fruition. And I do have to challenge you on Pepe being the biggest, though. Balogun is by far the biggest dual national to recruit.
I meant in terms of Mexican American.
Okay.
I meant in terms of no. Obviously, Balogun's big. I meant in terms of Mexican Americans. You've had Sendejas.
Gotcha.
No. Just to go on that.
Agree there. Then. Yeah.
No, and we'll just to go on that. Like Pepe, just like talk about. Like to me, there's also a kind of like this debate. You saw Pepe score that iconic goal, right? Mexican American player Pepe, who didn't get looked at essentially by the Mexican national team, scores on Ochoa, who is arguably a legend within CONCACAF, within FIFA, just in general, scores on a legend, and that goal scores a third goal. And after that third goal, there's that kid with the Mexico bandana and a U.S. men's national team jersey, takes it off, kisses the U.S. men's. Oh my! If that didn't break any hearts, man, that to me was just so significant and so iconic because what it means, right? Like at least for me, that there's a shift in the next generation of kids that are watching this game and watching this rivalry with U.S. versus Mexico, and watching that and then seeing that kid just I ain't rocking no. And look, he gets to decide, and that's his choice. Pepe got to decide, right? Zendejas got to decide, right? And you had other players like John Rahu who went with the Mexican national team, and that's where I feel like the impact Pepe will have with these kids and being able to score and those different things. Those to me are very significant moments, and I feel like Mexico's losing that battle with the next generation, because who's going to want to support a team that is losing and is getting smacked around? And right now, there's no rivalry if you can't beat a team, if you can't beat your rival at least once in the last 6 games, and you got smacked around 3-0. Like, is there really a rivalry? It don't look like it to me.
So I'm saying U.S. got to get some new rivals in Copa America, but no, look, I think that was a symbolic moment for sure, and I think I somebody tweeted simply, "This is the moment," right? It was emblematic of the switch from Mexico being top dogs to the United States. And well, it's been in the process for the past few years. It's completed in that moment in 3-0, in finishing them off in a dominating fashion, almost dispatching with Mexico and proving the levels between the two at this moment in time. So yeah, absolutely was. And I think you bring up a great point, because I don't think that the US has necessarily targeted that next generation, at least, in terms of commercial marketing, trying to attract those type of fans, because the young Latinx fans, right, are the contingent that are mostly heavily into soccer, more than probably a lot of other contingents in the United States that the US can get fans from, right? And if the US is building on that and beating Mexico and winning over these young fans, that is how the US is going to start to fill stadiums in the future, like they
Mm-hmm.
failed to do in the final, right?
Yeah. No, I'm completely with you. That's one thing. If I was advising the U.S. men's national team or anything like that, they have to look at now advertising to Mexican Americans. There's a lot of pretty much almost everybody in Central America supports the U.S. men's national team, and I think right now they haven't done a good job. But maybe a player like Pepe, who's Mexican American, I think the U.S. men's national should market to. They need to market
Hmm.
to Mexican Americans, Salvadorians, Guatemalans, and stuff, because that's how you're right. That's how they're going to fill these stadiums. It was empty, and that's how you're going to be able. There is a big following. Look, you and I go to a lot of these games. I've been going to, and you also have a Mexican American friend that goes for the national team. We all know a lot of those people, but right now the U.S. men's national team maybe is not paying attention, or maybe doesn't feel like they can get those fans. But right now, after that Pepe goal, and I was able to that thing just went viral. That moment of the kid taking it off, and I think if the U.S. men's national team wants to attract those fans or wants to fill the stadiums, you do it by reaching out to the Hispanic market, or said putting out those ads, and you build it off Pepe. You build it off Pepe in that goal.
And
That's what I
that
would
kid
do.
is you're right, and that kid is proving that it's not a difficult task. That's why we're talking about it, right? It's not something
Mhm.
that should be difficult, because the players on the field are doing the most difficult job for you, right? And so once that part is accomplished, once you're the better side, once you're winning 3-0, then it's easy to become a US fan.
Yeah, but you also gotta have. There's another caveat to that. This is why Pepe is so important. You also have a player that looks like you. Right? Pepe looks
Hmm.
like me, right? Like, right?
Absolutely.
Pepe looks like me, right? Pepe looks like any Hispanic or Guatemalan or whatever can look at Pepe and be like, okay, that I'm riding with him because we look similar. He was Mexican. You know what I'm saying? That's why
100%.
Pepe is so significant, and that's why if Sendejas kills it, right? If US ever has And they who do they have from the Sounders? What's his name? The Rodon brothers, right? One of them plays for the national team. Obviously, he's not on this team, but players like that are so important for the national team. They need to have success within the team, and that's why I feel like that moment was so significant. And they need to now target the Hispanic market if you're the U.S. men's national team. Justin, no, great thoughts there. Let's talk a little bit about this. Obviously, Nations League champion, back to back. Now you talk about Copa America, but look, we have Gold Cup coming up. But then there was news, surprising news from the U.S. national team that Greg Berhalter is coming back. Out of all the great things that happened for U.S. men's national team, digest this for me, because not every it seems like the players are very satisfied and very happy, but the fans obviously weren't. But also, what are the players going to say, right? You expect them to be honest and share their thoughts. It looks like Pulisic is a big supporter. A lot of other players as well. Give me your thoughts on the Greg Berhalter signing, coming back with the men's national team.
Yeah, there is so much to discuss, so I don't even know where to start. But I guess it's a confusing decision, right? Because you hire a new sporting director, you bring in an outside company in sportsology to make the hire and help you and dissect these things, and you say that it's an open process and all of these things. And then it comes out later that, well, in reality, Greg Berhalter kind of set a lot of these standards that you're going by in terms of hiring, right? All of these, he has the highest win percentage in U.S. men's national team history. He brought the recent trophies because he's been in the job. And so when you're comparing him with people who haven't been in the job and you're using those standards, it's a little bit questionable. I looked over the hiring process. To me, it just looked like a college PowerPoint. Honestly, I didn't see much that had to do. It was about like your commitment to the United States, your leadership abilities, things like that. Very little had to actually do with tactical knowledge, with football, and so I didn't understand that. Maybe behind the scenes, it was better than that. I think it was just interesting that and confusing that you take these 6 months to do all of these outside things and then you end up bringing back the same guy. Maybe that means that he's just the best guy for the job and that everybody who's inside can realize that and nobody outside understands it. Or maybe there's another explanation in that when Crocker came in, that was the decision. That when, it seems like it has been a long-term decision in that Greg Berhalter was ready to hop on a plane to Mexico and take the Club America job until he got that phone call saying, hey, don't hop on that flight, Greg, because you're going to get the US job. Right. So
Yeah.
And then of course when it gets released the moment before Mexico kicks off, literally like minutes before kickoff, right? Now you're there's questions all over of why is it being released then, right? Obviously the official announcement came the next morning, so why is it being leaked at that exact moment right at kickoff when the focus should be on the game? Are you trying to split media coverage? Is it coincidental? What is the real reason behind that? There's just so
Justin, I think
many
we're losing
questions,
you
and
real quick. Sorry, it kind of was cutting off, but go ahead. Go ahead.
there's just so many points of confusion and question marks when it comes to this hire. And BJ Callahan has done a fantastic job in this Nations League, and that brings up the next question: why is he in charge of Gold Cup? Why are you not bringing Berhalter to go
Mm-hmm.
and be in charge of Gold Cup? Because if he's the manager, get him back in as soon as possible. The negative you had was already leaving him out in this 6 months because you're kind of in a stagnant period when your whole idea is, well, we want to progress with the same person, right? Well, if you want to do that, you want to get him back in the job as soon as possible, not leave him out for another few months. So just a lot of weird decisions, a lot of questionable decisions where just questions need to be asked and answers probably need to be given.
Yeah, and to me, it's just so weird how they gone about it. Like to your point on the Gold Cup, like why isn't he coming back after this Nations League? And also, like, why address it now and not wait till after the summer, right? Like, if you're not going to put him in charge for Gold Cup, then wait to announce it after Gold Cup if he is going to be the guy, right? And I think to me the planning was just very bad. And like I don't know what why they wanted to leak it right before. Maybe they thought this is a perfect time to leak. Maybe because you know what it is. Maybe they wanted to soften the blow. Um, you know, with Greg Berhalter, and they announced it right at the U.S. Mexico game, which is so weird to do it. And it kind of it's in a weird way. Like, don't you have want to have a good connection with your fans? Don't you want to have a right? You can't tell your fans everything, but you want to be transparent and how you share the news, right? And this doesn't didn't like not every fan that went to the game or watched the game. Maybe some fans found out at halftime or after the game, or that is such a weird way to find out if you're a fan of this team and how they went about it. And right, and you talk about the work that they did the last 6 months, like what work did you do if you ended up with the same guy? There's no way that with all due respect to Greg Berhalter, there's no way that like you can't tell me Jesse Marsh or these other candidates or what are like the details and stipulations maybe that will come out that a coach like Jesse Marsh or someone else didn't get your job. It's a weird situation, at least outside looking in.
Yeah. No, it absolutely is. Um, I think it's one of those things where maybe something happened and something will connect the dots. There's so many questions that maybe one of the answers will connect the dots. Like, for example, okay, was it leaked intentionally at that time? Maybe not. Well, if it wasn't, maybe it was a more long-term decision and it was kind of rushed because of the Club America decision that Greg Berhalter had to have. And then the dominoes fell right when he decided to not get on that plane. People started to connect dots from there, right? Something happened in terms of where this decision was made or in terms of how this decision came out, because it's not normal for you to be playing a massive Nations League semifinal and massive news of your next coaching hire to break at the same moment, right? That is out of the ordinary. So why that happened, who knows? Why Greg Berhalter is back and what the full process was, hopefully we will find out more. What I found interesting is, like, you're bringing back a coach as well that has known issues with players on the team, right?
Yeah.
With he hasn't spoken with three players, Gio Reyna, Ricardo Pepi, and Zach Steffen, since the World Cup, since they were told, Steffen was told, or sorry, Pepi was told he wasn't going, but the other two after the World Cup, right? So and then you say, well, it'll be dealt with between me and Gio and Matt Crocker. Well, what does Matt Crocker have anything to do with this when he wasn't even there when the issue started? And then you say, well, I'll talk to them when they reach out to me. I just don't understand these type of things. You're having to resolve a lot of other issues, outside issues that wouldn't be an issue with another
New
manager.
coach.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also to that point, Gio Reyna, you saw like Greg Berhalter not pay him and not play him in the World Cup, which to me made no
Hmm.
sense. And obviously there was like some issues going on that obviously we found out after the World Cup with Gio's parents and all that. But like you clearly see how important he is
Hmm.
to the men's national team, the way he controls the midfield, the way he can use his skill just to break the lines and everything. You see how talented he is. And look, and I think kind of which is so weird is like that the U.S. Federation didn't consider like that whole situation with Gio and his parents and how ugly it got, and want to rehire. Because look, I don't know anything, but I don't feel like Claudio Reyna and Greg Berhalter have spoken since all that stuff leaked, right? Since all that bad blood that's there. Look, you can always hash things out, but I feel like there's always going to be that bad blood between them, especially say if Greg Berhalter decides not to play Gio or whatever. Hopefully they can overlook that and he gets the playing time he's able to start. But if they're it just seems to me like outside looking in, like Greg Berhalter with players sometimes, even when that Weston McKennie thing happened, or certain things that happen with players, I think he doesn't know how to handle the situations, and it kind of those situations end up coming out to the media instead of kind of like some of those things should be kept in house. And I think Greg Berhalter doesn't understand how to handle certain egos. And I think he comes across that his ego is bigger than everybody else. Outside looking in, that's just my perspective. And hopefully he can handle those individual situations a lot better and with his experience. But yeah, I'm very shocked that he's a guy.
Yeah, well, that's what it is. I mean, it's not to me. It's not about Matt Crocker. It's not about Claudio Reyna. It's about Greg and Gio. Can they resolve their issues? Because that's the coach and that's the player, and those are the two. And it's between them. It doesn't involve anybody else, in my opinion. Yes, Claudio was actually involved in the situation. Matt wasn't. Crocker, that is. But I just, and Gio, he's clearly not over it, right? That him putting blonde hair in these games is a statement. He's saying, everybody look at me, watch me on that field because I'm
Hmm.
going to be taking over this game. And he did that in the final. He is at 20 years old, has the most goal contributions ever for the United States in finals, right? He is the most talented player to ever play for this nation. And to have
That's
that
a
type of
statement.
player. Oh, it's not a question. He is the most talented player to ever play for the United States, and to have your coach in an argument or whatever you want to call it with that player, that is not beneficial for the national team, and that needs to obviously be the number one uh, job that Greg Berhalter needs to tackle when he steps back into the job.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He just has to know how to manage egos, and at that level, you just got to know how to manage egos.
But
And you,
neither of them seem willing to make the first step, right? They're both like, well, when they talk to me, I'll have the discussion.
yeah, yeah. That's how it typically goes. But also, I think when it happens like that with coaches and players, right? Look, we have a perfect example with Steve Sharondole here in LA. Those situations don't really get leaked out or anything like that happen, right? And I think to me, it's also like yeah, maybe Gio was acting very childish and all these different things. But maybe also Greg Berhalter. I think he's shown that he doesn't know how to handle the situations, right? When players are acting or being a little too egotistic or not showing up to practice or this and that. There's a way that you have to have some psychological. That's where great coaches come into play. Like you're a big fan of Pep, right? Stuff like that doesn't get leaked out. Stuff like Pep doesn't put up with that because I think he also sets up
Well,
a he sets up a foundation. He sets up like this is what it is and this is how it is. But he also has that resume, and I think Greg Berhalter being so buddies with obviously being best friends with Claudio Reyna and all this stuff. I, I think he didn't know how to properly separate it, and then he ultimately kind of flipped on Reyna. And I think that's where I think Greg Berhalter is not as talented when it comes to coaching because that doesn't have to do with any of these tactics. It has to be able to how to handle these social situations that may be a little stressful. Be like, why is this kid acting up, or why is he doing this and that? Right? You got to know as a
yeah.
coach how to handle the situations.
Look, I don't disagree with you, but just to play devil's advocate and say it is a more difficult job in a national team than it is as a club. When you look at, for example, Pep Guardiola, when he has an issue like João Cancelo, who's being an issue in the locker room, he ships him out immediately, right? And you can't just do that in a national team. You can't swap players in and out. You can't sign a player or sell a player. There, you have the players that you have, and so it is a little bit. You have to and so but that also brings up what you're saying is more important in a national team, right? Having that ability to have a good
Yeah.
relationship with every type of person and every type of player is more important.
Well, yeah, well, it's also because you're not gonna have these players like on a club team every single day, but you got to understand that like, hey, for these, well, how long is the World Cup? A month and a half, 2 months, or whatever. You got to be able to understand like, hey, these guys are coming and playing. Look, some of the club teams that these guys play is it's clearly way bigger than the U.S. men's national team. Like, as a coach, you don't understand that, like, how not. I'm not saying it's more important. I'm saying they're just
But yeah,
bigger with the limelight, the star being superstars.
I mean,
They're
nothing's bigger than the World
with
Cup,
their
but
club
yeah.
team. I know what I'm saying, but what I'm saying, they don't get the. Let me put it this way, right? When Chelsea, right? When Chelsea won the UEFA Champions League, right? They had the parade and stuff like that. They get more love out there than they do here because we got so many other sports. We got NBA and stuff. What I'm saying is like they maybe because of they have those experiences come. I'm not saying this is what happens, but right, like, hey, maybe this will happen. I don't have to go as hard in practice, or maybe I don't have to. Whatever the case was, my point is going back to like you got to understand if you're Greg Berhalter to understand like how to handle that. Okay, maybe this he's coming off high, he's feeling himself. Let me just he can't completely excel. You just got to be able to handle those situations better moving forward. Are you still there, or did I lose you? I think we might have lost Justin. Let me see. Justin, you there?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
I think we might have cut out for a bit. Yeah, I can hear you. I think we cut out for a bit.
Yeah, I switched to my hotspot because it wasn't my internet was cutting.
No worries. Yeah, just the Gio Reyna thing. Let's finish off. Obviously, U.S. men's national dismantled Mexico. They beat smashed on Canada. News just broke. Obviously, Diego Coca national team. As a U.S. national team fan, what are your thoughts outside looking at getting fired?
Look, I mean, this is what Mexico does. They sack managers very quickly, and after bad results like this, they'll generally be gone. But it is very quick. I mean, what, 7 games, I think, for Diego Coca, which is just ridiculously quick. And my reaction as a U.S. fan is simply that the U.S. broke Mexico. I mean, they don't know what to do anymore. And the reaction is just, we got to sack a manager, get a new one, and try and go from there.
Look, for me, after being at the stadium and seeing how, like I said earlier, how ugly it got with the fans and just the field, I felt there was no way. I felt like I felt like he was gonna get fired. Like Mexican, you never know. There's just weird. There's all these different influencing the national team. So a lot of people were kind of surprised with the firing. But I think anytime you lose your biggest rival like this, there's clearly ever way back at these high stakes. What we're going for, because also like at least for me now they want to appease the fans, and to me, this is where I talk a little bit about the corruption and everything behind the scenes of people who influence the national team, because Coca was probably not the best guy for this job because of what the type of players. There was other guys that probably could have got this job, and I think for me it was hard to see another Argentine coach get the job after what happened with Tata Martino. And I think you needed someone that didn't have, at least for me, like that wasn't that represented the Mexican national team. It didn't have to be Mexican, but I was very surprised that it was another Argentine. And now you see the interim is Jaime Lozano, who's Mexican, who was one of the candidates who's had success with the younger generation. He's going to be interim, but I think they're trying to appease the fans back, because I think all the fans, at least from the Mexican side, they're not planning on going to the Gold Cup games. And when we start hitting the pockets, right, we'll see if this is going to appease the Mexican fans. But the Gold Cup is down. Mexico, a lot of players like Alexis Vega is not going. There's a lot of players that they said that they don't want to come back for the national team. There's a lot of chaos and drama. Like you said, it break Mexico, but also it's like, if you got players that don't want to play for the national team and don't want to go to the Gold Cup, it kind of says a lot. And Mexico is the biggest money factor for CONCACAF and Gold Cup, right? If you don't got the Mexican fans coming out, and those stadiums, they're going to play games at SoFi. Our game's not going to be filled. It's hard for me to see Mexico fans come out to those games and fill that up, because it's not. It doesn't, to me. There's a lot of fans not wanting to go, and I don't know if Jaime Lozano and the firing is going to quickly change their mind.
So that's what I was going to ask you, because I was wondering from the outside why Coca was not at least given the Gold Cup, right? Because Mexico could go and win that, especially with the depleted squad the United States is going to bring. And if Coca was able to do that, maybe he could, salvage a little bit of his reputation. Do you think it is simply a goal of bringing out Mexico fans, or is it what exactly is that?
Well, to me, it's like the federation finally stepping up and realizing, like, hey, we got to make a change, because right, like no one was gonna go support Coca, even if it was this coach. You probably would see similar fans at the game that there were at the third place, because still fans are gonna go support the national team no matter what. But I think when this happened, an embarrassing loss to your biggest rival is that there's no way for me. There's no way to come back from that as a coach, even if you keep your job with the fans. There was no way. Everybody was pissed. Everybody seeing that live and just feeling that, I was like, there's no way he's coming back because even like you can't lose that way. And there's no way you can come back as a coach. You can't lose that way. You can lose, but you can't get embarrassed like that. And no one's gonna ride with you as a coach. And I think that's when the federation realized that they're like, yeah, this is a lost cause. We can't keep riding with this guy. And there's no way they still got to make their money. The only way they get their money is when people go to these stadiums and go to these arenas. But you also got the players saying that they don't want to be part of the national team. That's another hit on the coach. That's another hit on the federation. That's another hit on everybody's pockets, right? So I think they realized very quickly, like after that happened, that they messed up and they've been making poor decisions. And now the Mexican Federation's having to backtrack with all these moves that they're doing. But you gotta look at you got to mention you got Gold Cup coming up, but there's also Leagues Cup. Alexis Vega, who plays for Chivas, didn't want to play in the Gold Cup. Gold Cup is also like in a sense kind of watered down. You know, and U.S. isn't taking their best team. Mexico isn't having the best players. I don't think Canada is. You know, like Gold Cup is kind of in a way losing it to you. Are you still there? We're losing you.
Yeah, I think so. It's sketchy connection today, but no, it's interesting. I would draw the parallel because the U.S. is like it's something we forgot to mention about Berhalter because the U.S. is kind of on that other side. Obviously, they're keeping Callahan for the Gold Cup, which we did discuss, but to to see the difference between just winning and winning in style, right? And that's what you were talking about in Mexico on the other side, losing versus losing badly, right? There's a difference between just losing and getting embarrassed. And there's a difference for the US between winning and scraping by, which to me is what Greg Berhalter has been doing in these type of competitions, versus dominating them, which is what we saw this tournament under BJ Callahan. And so it brings up the question, you're announcing it right before the Nations League, and then BJ Callahan dominates the Nations League, which to me shows that at the very least, that anybody else can do what Greg Berhalter is doing. If not, that Greg Berhalter is holding the United States men's national team back, because we saw changes from BJ, like starting Gio, playing Gio in midfield, playing Joe Scally, that made large differences. These are things that, of course, Greg Berhalter did refuse to do at the World Cup. So it brings up that question as well, and I see the parallel.
Yeah, he's like a good coach for the U.S. men's national team.
He's looked great.
But yeah, he looked. Wait, the changes he made and starting Balogun right away. He started the best players without, he didn't do this whole weird process others coaches to. Let's finish off with this. Obviously, obviously you watched the LAFC game. I know the Nations League kind of took over everything. Your thoughts? Quickly, they won. They got a bounce back win against SKC.
Yeah, of course. Big win to get back on track. Vela scoring, his second open play goal this season in the league. So that is really big for LAFC. If he can get going, that can really jumpstart the season, or not jumpstart it, but get it back going after this slump. Because it's been poor, and Denny Bouanga has been really the only goal scorer, scoring nearly half the goals for LAFC in all competitions this season. And so Vela needs to be able to contribute and chip in there. And him catching Kyrie Shelton, I believe it was, napping and staying on side for that winner. It was, maybe not the best performance from LAFC, but it was also vintage, though, because it was Steve Cherundolo making a halftime change that helped and was definitely more defensive, but ended up getting LAFC 2 goals on the counter attack, one at the beginning and end of the second half. So it worked out. It may not have been pretty, but got the win and got back on track.
We'll see. They actually got a busy schedule here coming up. So with those games, look, Justin, I think we kind of nailed it with everything going on here this week, this past weekend, excuse me. But yeah, man, Hope to see you next week, and everybody that tuned in and watched it. We appreciate you guys, and we'll catch you guys next week.